Acadia After Dark is a horror podcast, and as such, may not be appropriate for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to the Acadia After Dark podcast, folks. I'm your host, the Reverend Redbeard. It's been a little while since I've done a solo episode, so I wanted to make sure we did one this week so that we would have a little chance to update some things, do a little housekeeping. So that's important, right? Last couple of episodes of the podcast, anyways, we've been doing some different stuff, some interviews and things like that, so that's been really fun. Looking forward to doing more of those. I'm gonna reach out and see if I can get some more guests lined up for the next few shows after this, but it was a good opportunity for me to pop in. We can talk about some things and some plans and kind of go over some of the stuff that's been discussed in the last few episodes. Some thoughts and some things that kind of came to, the front when I was discussing things after the show with people and things that came up after. Pretty interesting. So, if you're new to the show, the Acadia After Dark podcast is basically the more casual show on the Acadia After Dark channel. Pretty low-key. We either discuss events of the show of the last week, or we'll talk to a local expert, somebody that's somehow in some way associated with things that are spooky in Maine. And other times we'll just kind of do what we're going to do this episode, where it's going to be more of a catching up period, because it's been a little while since I talked to you. So one thing that's been new in recent week or so, I'd say about a week and a half, two. So somehow or another, and I know it's been a little while since I've done a solo episode, so here's some tangential stuff and then we'll get into the meat of the matter. So I wrote a piece a couple weeks ago, and it was basically an informative piece talking about Acadia National Park and the effect that the recent cuts to federal funding would have. Now, my life is pretty much intrinsically linked to the park itself at this point, because I've lived here most of my life. So it's very important to me, and it's also very important to my community around me. So I take it very personally when things get in the way of the safety of the park or threaten it. And that's where we're at now, unfortunately. And it's not hyperbolic at all to say that the park, or national parks in general, all public forest, is at risk right now. And if you don't think that it is, you're a fool. I don't mind saying that. And if you happen to live in one of those places that does, have that, and you don't appreciate it for what it is and want to protect that, I don't know how to fix you. But I'm not here to preach. I do that in other places. What I am here to do is to talk about the effects that had on the show, Acadia After Dark, and the podcast, and anything else associated with it, right? So one big thing that came as a result of my piece was it put a bunch of stuff into my algorithm that was more nature centric and more centered around national parks and park conservation, which is great. Something I'm very passionate about, so I'm very excited to see that stuff is just there. But then one weird thing, sorry about all the racket, I took a sip of coffee and got it in my beard and had to wipe it up. So, one thing that came up after writing that piece, and it's one of those things that just once the algorithm is going your direction in a certain way, it's gonna just go that way. So in the park conservation stuff, I saw, and I followed them for a while on Facebook, but I happened to see a post come across my page from them recently because they've been a lot more active than they were when I followed them back in what I think it was probably 2016, 2017. I think they started in like 2017. So, um, when I first followed them, they weren't as active as they are now, but now there's a lot more going on. So, one part of their resistance has been they've been taking pictures of various locations around the park and posting them, whether it be an SOS sign or a distress sign of some way. Well, the original post was this one that was a bunch of the volunteers in the park had went and they basically during low tide had made an SOS symbol with rocks and seaweed and stuff on the beach, sand beach. Beautiful picture, and I wanted to share it, so I shared it from Facebook, and well, Threads hadn't seen that picture, and it juiced the algorithm. I mean, I have not seen that. I've been on Threads since day one, and I've been on a lot of social media platforms. I've never seen the algorithm do the things it did that day because it boosted that friggin' picture to probably every person on Threads, and by the end of the day had thousands and easily thousands of interactions. So obviously other people are very passionate about the parks, and that is amazing. So that basically kind of led me to the perspective that in my position where I care so much about the park, and the park is such an important part of the storytelling that we do here, we need to make sure we foster that relationship. And there's a kind of a stewardship to it, right? You're national parks, you are the steward of them, so we need to protect them. And I want to make sure that this platform does honor the park, but also anything that I post that's related to the park and stuff like that, I want it to come from a place of that people understand it's because we want to protect these parks, and that's why. And so with those posts and seeing that response from people on those in particular, I was just blown away. So that's been really awesome. And as a result of that, again, it juiced the algorithm like crazy. So then that's increased the reach of the page and Acadia After Dark. And as a result of that, I mean, I think today we had over 3,600 followers on Threads, which doesn't seem like a big deal to some, but to my little account that 2 weeks ago had 250 followers to now, it's a night or day difference. It's also kind of turned into an ARG account because a bunch of ARG accounts found me, and even though that wasn't really an intentional thing before, I have had some posts that are vaguely that, and I've always said I would love to do that sort of thing. It's cool as hell to me. So it was fun to see that just like manifest kind of organically, because now I saw somebody yesterday that was like, oh, a haunted forest just followed me. And, well, I'm not just a haunted forest, I'm a haunted region of New England and part of Canada. So it's a little more than a forest. There's a lot of forest in it. Anyways, that was a fun thing in the last couple of weeks here, and how that's changed like the entire demographic of social media right now. Um, when you get a certain following anywhere, at a certain point, your notifications just cease working. So you're just constantly like, it's either you gotta just shut it off and ignore everything, or you gotta be watching everything. And finding that balance is not easy sometimes. What I am doing now is I'm definitely prioritizing that I gotta like limit the amount of like social media usage and interaction, because I need to still be doing my research. I still have a job to do here for the show. And part of that is we've been, producing the Fearsome 5. We've been doing the interviews and stuff. I want to do a lot more interviews. What did we did? We did an interview with Bahara Ghost Tours, Jennifer. That was an excellent interview. Had a blast talking to her. Really looking forward to going on the tours this summer. That's going to be so fucking cool. I can't wait. Then we're going to have the next one after that, I want to say, was what? It was Jean Tewksbury. So we talked to her about the ghost cats of Maine. That was a great interview. I love talking to her. She's very knowledgeable and wicked cool to talk to. Also, wrestling fans, I'm always down for talking wrestling with people, so that was cool. Then had Nomar last week. That was an awesome one. I was super excited to talk to him because I'm a fan of his. I'm a fan of all of these people I have on my show, really. But I'm a fan of his and the work he does, and just having that, really, it was a cool conversation. Getting to hear his stories is awesome. So I'm looking forward to more guests, because that is just the tip of the iceberg there, and I feel like that kind of just primed the pumps for what I'd like to continue to do with this part of the show anyways, and this podcast. But it's just one piece of an expanding network of stuff that I have in the pipeline and we're working on. So we have the podcast still going, try and continue to expand on that. In the meantime, we have Fearsome 5 still going strong. We've done several of those. That's a weekly series. Now it's up to, I want to say, 8 or 9 episodes. We just did the one with the Willem Alone the other day. Before that, we had now I'm trying to remember the order of them. We've had so many of them now. I think the last one that I talked about on the podcast was probably the Hide Behind, but we've done the fur-bearing trout since then, the Hide Behind, the Agropelter, I feel like we've done like 4 or 5 episodes of that since the last solo podcast we've done, so that's a lot. And those are they don't get a ton of views, but I feel like that's going to be building into something. Because then the other day when I did the video, I was telling people asked on Threads, they wanted to hear the stories from the woods. Specifically, they wanted to hear lumberjack stories. So I was like, okay, what do you want to hear? And people said, we want to hear about the Fearsome Critters. So I did a top 5 deadliest Fearsome Critters videos. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out. It's a fun little video. Haven't done top 5s before, so that was different, but it was a cool one. Wouldn't mind doing some of them for other things. And that kind of gave me an idea of just branching out a little bit more from what I had originally planned on doing. And trying to do some of that type of regular YouTube content, because that's something that I haven't really ever done. And I don't know, maybe it'd be fun. In the meantime, we do have the teasers for Season 2 are coming out, trickling out slowly. If you follow us on social medias, you'll see the odd post with very little context, and that's usually a sign that there's going to be something associated with that coming up in the next season. Next season's definitely going to be a big difference from the first season. I think people will enjoy it, but it's going to be a big shift for what the style of the original was. And part of that's growth, part of that's me learning some new things, and part of me's deciding that I would like to kind of change the way we're telling the story here, because I definitely want to be telling the story of the park and Acadia. And I think that I found an interesting story to tell. So I think y'all will be enjoying the next season. That'll be coming I don't want to say soon because I don't want to get people thinking that it's going to be right off here, because there's definitely going to be some time, but we're working on that. And the book is coming along. I finished the first draft. I'm just in the middle of I'm in between things because I started a poetry book at the same time, and then I moved on to beginning the editing process for the first nonfiction book that I'm gonna have to do a fair amount of retooling on a couple of sections because I've learned stuff since I wrote those chapters, and I guess that's kind of part of that and why you want to go back and reread. Because every once in a while, if you're still in the process of writing and you happen to learn something through the grapevine, it's cool to catch it before it gets put in hard print, right? So another one we're going to be doing is the poetry book. Like I said, I've been writing I enjoy poetry. I never said that I was a poet, but I do enjoy poetry, and the one officially published work I ever had was a poem. So I guess that must mean something, right? And we do have more plans for future, like, not really teaser videos, but kind of ARG analog videos, because I think that's going to be more of an element for the shorts on YouTube, because they're just kind of fun. Some of them hit and algorithm does wild things with them, and other times they fall flat. That's been kind of both this week. Had one silly little video I posted the other day and it completely just bombed instantly. I think I got 1 view. Next video I posted after that just went wild, and I just do not understand sometimes how that happens, but this is YouTube. That's what it is. Anyways, before we go any more, that was the housekeeping part of it. I think we're pretty much updated, so let's talk about a little bit of the stuff that we've been talking about on the show, specifically, where we're going into the Fearsome Critters stuff. So we did the top 5 of that the other day. And the thing with Fearsome Critters is, and I kind of mentioned it at the end of the video, and I try and do the videos in a way that I'm telling the story and trying to keep it fun and whimsical and fantastical, right? But there's always like a true story behind every myth or every legend that you hear. So with a lot of these Fearsome Critter stories, you can get a kind of picture of what it is that might have happened, that would have preempted the story and concocted it in people's brains, right? And that's what I want to get into, the idea, the talking about the telling of stories and how they evolve over time. That's something I've brought up in several of my videos before in the Acadia After Dark series, and it's something that'll come up a lot in the book. So, stories, when they start out, there will be always a fragment of truth. And some days you can see nowadays where that can go to the extreme. But in the original, in smaller stories, the more fantastical they are, if it's harmless, well, then no big deal, right? And that's kind of where Fearsome Critters, this is a fun, whimsical, interesting, sometimes silly or stupid, but other times absolutely fucking terrifying thing. And when you're looking at some of these Fearsome Critter stories that I've already covered on the channel, what ones stand out? Well, you look at like the fur-bearing trout. That's one that has been retold in so many different places in so many different ways, and it is such a weird, offbeat story that it makes no fucking sense. Like, it makes no sense. If you look at it and then you see that, like, hey, this thing, basically when you get to a certain point and you get to the fucking meat of it all, and people have the taxidermy, ones up on the wall at the, like, the bait shop or whatever. And well, that kind of says a lot about American storytelling and American folklore. We did have that with the jackalope, right? You know, in places that's like a more common story. We don't have those in Maine, but if we did, you better believe I'd be talking about it all the fucking time, because it's a cool little cryptid, and I love those things. But with things like, you know, you got the fur-bearing trout, it's an innocent, weird little fish. It ain't gonna hurt nothing. Then you get into these ones that it's like almost it's a fucking SCP or something, where you're talking about the Willow Malone the other day. The thing's literally a hallucinogenic squirrel. It's a squirrel that will make you have like the worst trip of your life and permanently mess you up. And that's, you know, just a random story that some guy came up with because he probably friggin' ate poison mushrooms or something, or bad food, and then started having hallucinations or some shit. Or, you know, you have ones like the agropelter, where it's like, yeah, the concept of like something that's up in the trees, and I even have a video I'm gonna post tomorrow that looks like that. Something being up in the trees and throwing crap at you is not outside of the realm of possibility, right? But when you live in North America and you know there's not really a lot of stuff that climbs trees that's gonna be able to throw shit at you, then you're starting to think, well, they're lumberjacks working in the woods, and for a stick or a log to fall out of a tree and land on them and kill one of them was not exactly unheard of, and more common than you probably think. So you can see how certain stories, they started out as, oh hey, you know, this guy had a tree limb fall on him and it hit him in a really weird way or whatever, or it seemed to fall a certain amount of distance, and then that guy's like, oh well, you know, it must have been an agropelter, I guess. And then the story just gets retold. And some stories like that, you know, you get, the more it's retold, the more it changes. So you start out where it's like a little monkey thing, to then, you know, you're talking about this thing's got like these wiry sinew arms, and it looks like it's a fucking, like, I don't know, it's some weird vine monster or some shit, right? So when you get into that, and you look at how other stories evolve over time, and then you imagine where it originated, it's kind of an interesting twist on things. The other thing that came up as a result of one of the other videos, and it wasn't the Fearsome 5 or any of those associated ones. So there was another video that I posted on, I want to say it was on YouTube, and it was of a woman at the Super Bowl, and like poking a little Patrick Mayhem friggin' voodoo doll she made. She's like stabbing it. Wild, right? Most of the comments that I saw on the video, and I don't usually look at a lot of the comments, if it's like a short like that, I'm just like, it's whatever. It's not like it's like I'm looking for any deep conversation into something that's 30 seconds long, right? But a lot of the comments were people would just be like, I can't believe that somebody would do that, or this person's allowed to vote, and all this stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, like, that's America. You know, it's like we have a whole bunch of different cultures and different beliefs, and a lot of people will do, you know, some out there stuff, obviously. But at the same time, I mean, if somebody's freaking sitting there and really believes that, you know, the entire fucking Super Bowl was thrown on that, well, you weren't paying attention to the rest of the series, obviously. Because if you had seen the freaking rest of what happened in that fucking game, I don't think any amount of voodoo had any influence on that. But this is just the way we are in the internet age, right? Because people just love to go on there and get angry and argue with each other and just say horrible shit to each other. Lie. All that, right? It's kind of the thing. And there's a market for it. It's intentional. We all know it. We all see it. Just depends on what you believe based off of your opinion. But nonetheless, we're gonna keep doing what we do in our fun little corner of the internet. And if you do enjoy what we do on that fun little corner of the internet, come on over and join us. We're gonna keep on with the YouTube stuff. I'm gonna keep doing the weekly podcast. Like I said, I'm gonna try and get some more guests lined up for the interviews and stuff. That's always a fun time. If you want to find us on social media or whatever, you can find us. Threads is a great place to get us right now. All kinds of fun happening over there. We also on Blue Sky, TikTok. A few people have found me from TikTok, apparently. I don't post a ton over there, and it's mostly reposted stuff from the other social medias, but if people find me from there, I'm happy to hear it. We're on Spotify. Oh, Apple Podcasts now. We have not been on there since I started doing the interviews, so that, yeah, we just got on Apple Podcasts finally. What a fucking pain in the ass that was to get on there. Sorry. I love you, Apple, but dude, your user interface is awful to get signed up sometimes. Like, there were so many verifications I had to do, and you get through one level of verification, it would break. You have to start all over again. I did that for 3 weeks before I finally got the final verification to confirm and go through to get the damn podcast on that platform. I'm glad it's there. I'm glad people are listening to it. Thank y'all if you are. If you're on Apple, you're on Spotify, thank you. I appreciate you. But that service was hard to get signed up for, so I'm glad that people are actually listening to it, because I would have been so bummed if it had just like been all that trouble and nobody bothered. But yeah, anyways, so we just passed 100 subscribers on YouTube. Minor milestone for some, but for me it's a big deal. We started this in October just to tell some spooky stories, and gonna keep on doing that and see where this goes. But as always, if you enjoy the show, make sure you like, subscribe, share, rate it if your platform allows. Whatever you can do helps the show out, and I very much appreciate it. I'll see you all in the socials. Make sure you hit us up. Anyways, I hope you all have a good one. I'll talk to you soon. Keep those lanterns lit. Stay safe out there.